Morning, everyone. This is Brian Bartels, membership chair of the North County Democratic Club, and this is part of a series of candidate interviews that we are doing with local Democratic candidates here in Palm Beach County. With me this morning is retired Major Alex Freeman, a Democrat running for Palm Beach County Sheriff this year. Mr. Freeman, thank you so much for joining me this morning and being available to answer our questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So this is not your first rodeo. You have been running for sheriff before, and many of us have seen you and your campaign throughout the county, and you've attended our meetings. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to folks that may not be familiar with your background and your inspiration for running for sheriff.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thanks for having me. My name is Alex Freeman. I'm a retired police major. I've served 22 years with the city of Riviera Beach, rising through the rank, becoming third in command of the police department as major of police. And during that tenure, I was very, very fortunate to serve in every position in the police department. Every police department has what you call it two chimneys, and that is the operational side of the house as well as the support side of the house. And I was very, very fortunate to work in both sides of the house. It gives you a well-rounded experience on how police departments work. And I retired in 2015 to run for sheriff in 2016, but I started August 5th of 2013 campaigning for the 2016 election. Unfortunately, I lost that race, but 3 days after I lost, I filed to run again. So I've been running in totality for this office for the last 7 years.
Excellent. Following the death of George Floyd in police custody, there has been a national outcry for police reform and a real rapid change in public mood to address police reform as well as systemic racism in the country. To what do you attribute this change? I mean, we've seen videos. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident, but it feels different this time. And so I wanted to get your perspective on what do you attribute that change originating from?
I think that what sparked this change, because we've seen this before, but not at this magnitude, in terms of the officer having his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The world was able to see that this guy was totally, he was handcuffed. He was no threat to law enforcement, and there was no need to have him on the ground for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The policies are that once you have the handcuffs on an individual, the fight is over, you place them in the car and you transport them to the jail, but there was no reason for this. So I think what happened is that the world saw that, and everyone can agree there was no reason for that. So that's what's bringing about this change. But let me just say this: because there are no human diversity 8-hour training courses in law enforcement anymore, where you would have to attend a classroom setting. It has gone from being a classroom setting of 8 hours, whereas officers have the opportunity to engage each other and express to them what they feel about each other's race, and they have a direct conversation. Now, sometimes it would get heated, but that was the idea for it to get heated so that we could then bring the solutions so that folks can understand why different cultures do what they do. But unfortunately, it has resorted now to officers sitting at a computer memorizing multiple choice questions as it relates to human diversity and racial bias. And as long as they memorize those questions and get them right, they have now just secured their law enforcement certification for another 4 years to be a police officer without having that direct interaction, which gave you a better understanding. So when you go out and police those communities, you have a great understanding of the culture of people that you're dealing with. And that's what we need to get back to as well.
Okay. And, you know, I know you have your solutions for how to address this. I know currently Congress is deadlocked on federal policing reform legislation. They're debating topics like banning the use of chokeholds, banning no-knock warrants in drug-related cases, creating a national database to track police misconduct, and addressing qualified immunity, lowering the legal standards to pursue criminal and civil penalties for police conduct. You know, do you agree with those approaches? And you know, what are sort of the policies that you would promote as Palm Beach County Sheriff so you can address those issues at the local level?
Yeah, I definitely agree with those approaches that they're taking. I do believe that there needs to be a citizen review board when deputies and officers engage in behavior that is nefarious. I think that it needs to be reviewed by them. I also believe that we need to take action immediately if officers and deputies violate the law, like we've seen. I believe that we should arrest them immediately and we should terminate them immediately. You know, I believe that unions should be more engaged, involved, you know, the police unions. You know, the unfortunate thing about police unions, and that's why you see the same officers, well, I wouldn't say the same officers, but the same type of officers able to go from agency to agency or get their jobs back, is because the unions, the police unions, are never going to support an officer or a deputy. Well, I'm sorry, they're never going to support an agency in terms of the sheriff or the police chief if he or she fires them, because for them, they want to maintain their membership, and maintaining the membership means funds coming into the union. So they're never going to support a termination. What they will support, and that's why they hire arbitrators. So arbitrators are in the pockets of the unions. They hire arbitrators, and the arbitrators rule in favor of bringing the officer or the deputy back. And in his or her finding, they say to the city, well, we're going to allow that termination now just to serve as a suspension. So if it was a 30-day termination, if the person been terminated for 30 days, then the arbitrator write up, it's going to serve as a suspension. That officer or deputy gets their job back because the arbitrator ruling is binding. You know, so we need to look at that. We need to change that. You know, that and that is why I refuse to take any funding from police unions, because as a sheriff, I don't want to be in the pockets of unions and those folks who are going to try to alter the decisions that we make. If a deputy or an officer deserves to be terminated, you know, that's what it should be, and it should stand, especially if the facts and elements supports it.
You mentioned, you know, funding for these certain programs. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office is seeking $740 million for the fiscal year 2021 budget, an increase of $30 million over the current year. Do you feel that that budget increase request is warranted? And what kind of spending priorities would you have as Palm Beach County Sheriff?
I think that the sheriff needs to be more transparent as to why he needs a budget the size that the budget is. You know, for me as the next sheriff, you know, when I get there, we're going to administer in the first 100 days of me being in office during our transition period, we're going to administer a forensic examination of the budget to determine if those programs, line item by line items, to determine if those programs serve as a benefit to the people of Palm Beach County, you know, and if not, we're going to eliminate those programs and identify new programs that will serve as a benefit. But also, it gives the county, board of county commissioners an opportunity to have funding if we reduce our budget, but still provide quality law enforcement services. You know, we reduce our budget, give them opportunity to identify programs as well that serve as a benefit to the people of Palm Beach County, but also serve as a cost saving to the taxpayers. You know, if we don't need that size of a budget, then I believe that we should give a portion of that back.
And do you support the implementation of police body cameras for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office? I know they're
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. the cost for outfitting 3,000 and some deputies is about $19 million. And with a budget the size of the sheriff budget, I'm sure that there's some room in there to eliminate a program so that we can outfit deputies with body cams, without a doubt.
As I'm sure you saw yesterday, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested for allegedly recruiting and abusing girls in a sex trafficking ring along with Jeffrey Epstein. This development has renewed interest in Mr. Epstein's work release program that allowed him to leave a Palm Beach County jail 6 days a week for 12 hours a day to work at his office in West Palm Beach. Do you feel that the Epstein's work release program was handled properly by PBSO? And if you were in that position, what would you do differently?
You know, the policy was that it is that individuals that are incarcerated for sex charges, sex offenses, they would not have the privilege of being a part of being on work release. You know, so as the next sheriff, no, we would not allow anyone to be placed on work release that was facing those charges. You know, it is unfortunate well, I shouldn't say it's unfortunate, it's sad that Sheriff Bradshaw gave Jeffrey Epstein a privilege that he gave no one else. And I have family members and friends that worked at the sheriff's office in correction that told me that Mr. Epstein had his own wing of the jail. They hooked up a water line to his cell so he can make his own tea and coffee. They provided a room for him where they put a stream TV in there for him. His cell door was completely unlocked while he was there, so he had the privilege of coming and going. You know, under a Freeman administration, that would not have happened. And it's unfortunate because while this Epstein was on work release, he continued with his nefarious behavior towards underage girls by having sex with them while supposedly being watched by and monitored by the sheriff's office. So that tells me that Bradshaw cared more about Epstein's well-being and probably his money than the safety of the young girls that suffered the tragedy of being sex trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein.
There has been a lot of talk about reallocating police funding to social services such as mental health care and education and housing, sort of the defund the police phrase. Is that how you interpret defunding the police, or what does that term mean to you?
When I hear defunding, I think of redirecting funds. You know, I think that there's this perception and belief that when we hear that word defunding, that they're going to do away with the police department. There's not going to be police departments. And the reality is that we do need law and order. So in redirecting funds, like I said earlier about doing a forensic audit of the budget, so we identify funds in the budget in terms of eliminating certain programs in the budget so that we could work in collaboration with social workers and mental health professionals, work on one umbrella in the sheriff's office, so that when we do have those type of calls for service, you know, those social workers and mental health workers, they can respond out to calls along with our deputies.
Okay. You know, finally, I just want to close by asking you, you know, we've had Sheriff Rick Bradshaw as the county's top law enforcement officer for 16 years now. You know, what should voters know about you to give them, you know, a better sense of making that change and maybe switching and earning your vote?
Absolutely. Well, you know, I want the voters to know that as the next sheriff, that I realize and understand that I work at the pleasure of the voters. The voters will ultimately serve as my boss. And so as the next sheriff, I have to be transparent, accountable, and accessible to the voters who will serve as my boss. And I want the voters to know that I demand that they'll that they hold me accountable for my actions, because I'm going to hold my staff accountable for their actions in terms of providing quality law enforcement services and being completely transparent with their taxpayer dollars.
Excellent. Well, again, Mr. Freeman, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us this morning. I hope you have a great 4th of July weekend. And I know there is so much more to talk about. And so I hope to continue this conversation, this much needed conversation, ahead of your August 18th primary.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, sir. And you have my number. You can give me a call anytime. And once I become sheriff, I want the voters to know, once I become sheriff, my phone number is on my campaign materials on my website. That is my phone number. And once I become sheriff, that is going to remain my phone number. So if there's ever any questions, any concerns, folks can give me a call directly at 561-502-5870.
There you have it. And we'll post that information on our website and our social media, so folks can reach out to you directly as well. Again, retired Major Alex Freeman, Democrat for Palm Beach County Sheriff. The primary election is this upcoming August 18th, 2020. Thank you again so much for your time.
Brian, don't forget to say that, although the primary is August 18th, early voting starts August 3rd through the 16th. So if you miss one of those 14 days of early voting, please vote on August 18th.
That's an excellent point. We need all the different ways we can vote, given the current pandemic situation. So thank you for that reminder. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.